Hello, everyone. Welcome to Weekly Dharma Gathering. My name is Sheena. Tonight's session, Black, Queer, Trans, Celebrating Precious Human Birth, will be led by Dr. Shanté Paradigm Smalls. Shanté will lead us through a guided meditation, Dharma talk, and we'll close out with a Q&A discussion at the end. Tonight's session will be recorded, so if you prefer not to be seen, please feel free to turn off your camera feature. Please note that you will also be recorded when asking a question. If you have a question during the guided instruction or the talk, please feel free to enter it into the chat box at any time, and we'll make sure we address it during the discussion period. The recording of tonight's gathering can be accessed within 48 hours via your purchased products on your Vimeo Weekly Dharma Gathering account. You will receive an email notification once tonight's video is posted. And I just want to take a moment to introduce you to our teacher for tonight. Dr. Shanté Paradigm Smalls is a student, practitioner, and teacher in the Tantric Buddhist tradition. Shanté began studying and practicing Buddhism at the age of 17 and has practiced in Zen, Soka Gaiaki International, Shambhala, and Bhumi Sparsa communities. Shanté trained from 2009 to 2015 as a teacher and was authorized to teach meditation and Buddha Dharma in 2015. Shanté is focused on the healing impact of meditation in Black and Indigenous communities, people of color communities, LGBTQ+ communities, and incarcerated and recovery communities. Shanté is a teacher on the Liberate app and teaches regularly on Weekly Dharma Gathering online, which they co-founded and curate. Shanté's root guru is the Kagma Sakyong Jamong Maham Rinpoche. Apologies for the inappropriate pronunciation there. Shanté is currently studying with Lama Rod Owens and Lama Justin Bajas, co-founders of Bhumi Sparsa. So Shanté, please teach us. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Sheena. And thank you all who are joining us live, and those who will watch the recording later. So it's, there's a lot going on in the world, and I was telling Sheena a little bit before I came on, I got a text from one of my best friends that her, she has a book that just came out, and an event tomorrow via Zoom, obviously, and her publicist's father had been sick with COVID-19 and just passed away this morning. And so, you know, even though we're also dealing with the uprisings that are cyclical around the violence that Black people in particular face in the US and around the world, there's also this context of COVID-19, which also disproportionately is impacting Black and Latinx and Indigenous people in the US and in Britain and in Brazil and other places. And so I think tonight's thinking about this relationship, it's Pride Month, you know, LGBTQ Pride Month. Of course, these Pride started off as a riot, 5 days of rioting from June 28th to July 3rd, that began because of police brutality against mostly Black and Latinx, queer and trans folks, and this erupted at the Stonewall Inn in the West Village section of Manhattan. And so even though it's been turned into a parade and, you know, commodified, and as all revolutions eventually are, it's important to remember the spirit, the revolutionary spirit of saying no, no more. And in many ways that there are parallels in terms of saying that we want to be liberated from individual suffering as well as our collective suffering. So I would just ask that we get into a position that's comfortable for us. It can be whatever that is for you, laying down or sitting, or if you want to stand, or if you want to walk, whatever feels like it makes it possible for you to be in your own body with as much ease and comfort as possible. It's not always to find those things, but with as much as possible. So many times inside of these practices that we come to perhaps later in our lives that are maybe we didn't grow up with, there's sometimes a way we either learn or imagine that we have to be in order to get it right. But really, invitation is to come as you are. And that includes, you know, being in your body however you need to be. And as we're feeling our seat and our feet and the connection to this earth, which is our home and our mother, our first witness, our first caregiver. We are made of her as well as stardust. And feeling this rooting down in the earth and this ability to take your seat or say, I'm here. This is my spot. I deserve to be here. And from that, feeling your body rise into the air, to the sky, with a sense of softness in your front, and strength in your back, feeling the top of your head rise to touch the sky. And if you know on whose land, the traditional land that you sit, it is appropriate now to honor those people who still live there and exist there. Here, where I live, the more local situation of folks who lived here are the Canarsie, and the wider nation that stretched basically from what is now mid-Hudson Valley down to Delaware is the Lenape, out to Pennsylvania as well, Jersey, maybe touching Pennsylvania, the Lenape Nation. And these are people who still live here and work to get back their land from settler colonial folks, and also for thousands and thousands and thousands of years soaked this land with their wisdom and human frailties and war and love and family and ability to be in learning how to be in equanimity with each other and the environment. So we invite all of that human experience of plants and animals and insects and beings in. I want to also invite in the people who were human trafficked to this stolen and trafficked to stolen land, and were stripped of eventually of language and nation and kinship and called a slave. And their labor extracted from them, and even under those conditions, there was the ability to make relationship with each other and to imagine freedom and another world. I call in all those generations, untold generations of hundreds of years into our practice. And I also call in the migrant who traveled or escaped to come to this land in order to experience something else, maybe political relief or religious relief or relief from oppression around their gender or sexuality or ethnic status, and maybe encountered other kinds of systems, but they built relationships, perhaps with the indigene, perhaps with the enslaved, and with other immigrants and migrants, perhaps. Just call upon their experience of blood, sweat, and tears, confusion, and adoption of perhaps cruelties that were engendered inside of the growing nation that would become the United States. So call in all the experience of your environment, good, bad, and different. We invite it all in to support our practice. I invite you to invite in those in your life, living or no longer living, who support you in your practice, known or unknown to you, who make it possible for you to be here. And particularly in this intensification of plague, famine, and war, the intensification of passion, ignorance, and aggression, we need to be held by our ancestors and our kin, and by the ancestors of history and land and time, who were able to defeat and surmount so much violence, evil, really. And evil meaning sort of devoid of the ability to engage in one's inherent wakefulness quality, the refusal. So much pain, and yet so many people were able to connect to each other and to the land and to the deities and to the ancestors, and to overthrow the forces of passion, aggression, and ignorance. And so we are completely equipped to do the same. We are completely equipped to wake up, and to wake up individually, to wake up interpersonally, and to wake up collectively. And that is our nature, to be awake. And yet we have to cultivate what is natural through our diligence and our exertion and our willingness. So I'm gonna sort of give you this very classical Buddhist teaching, but two versions of it. One is a translation of the contemplation. Just I'm going to give you the first contemplation for the 4 reminders, which have to do with birth, death and impermanence, karmic cause and effect, and samsara. But we're just going to talk about precious human birth. And then there is a practice written, a more contemporary practice written by a friend of mine. It's an excerpt from a sadhana, or an accomplishment practice, the sadhana of awakened melanin. And it's a version of the precious human birth. So the first thing I'd like to ask you to do is to bring your, whatever your intention or motivation or whatever brought you here tonight, bring that to, or whatever's been in your mind, bring that to your mind, which is located in your heart. Bring that into your body, whatever that motivation or intention is, and we'll just sit with that for a little bit. And if you don't know what it is, just feel what it might be. Feeling your intention saturate your whole being, not just conceptually, but your emotions, your physical being. Feeling it flow through your veins and capillaries and sink into your marrow, your sinew, your muscle and fat, bone. Feeling it awaken in your DNA and your RNA, your hormones, electricity in your body. Feeling that intention, and it intensifies and resides in your heart center. And just holding that, or feeling that rather, your motivation, your intention for practice. We'll just sit a little bit, feeling our body breathing, allowing first yourself to settle into your body, feeling your body, all of its aches and pains and tightness and looseness and hairs and moles and shapes and sizes and weight, length and width, height and depth. Feeling your emotional field, whatever it is, just recognizing it and welcoming it. Feeling your mind's activity, whatever that is, welcoming in that and inviting that in to your experience here. All of that is part of our wakefulness, part of our birthright, it's part of our wisdom. So let's just sit in that soup. Let's let it simmer. Again, if you feel more comfortable laying down or standing up or sitting in a chair or walking, please feel free to do that. So I'll give you the first reminder, the classical version, and we'll just contemplate it for a few minutes. And contemplation, if you've never done it before, is a way of working with body, speech, and mind. And so the first way you might contemplate it is just hearing the words. It's the simplest form. And then a deeper kind of contemplation as you're working with it is contemplating the meaning of the words to you. And then further is feeling what arises. So I'll ring the gong for the start of the contemplation and the end of it. And then we'll do the contemporary version of the first reminder. And you can find that, you can just Google 4 reminders and you can find them. There are many different versions, some more poetic than others, but I do like this particular translation. So the 4 reminders that turn the mind toward sanity or toward the Dharma. The chanting of the instruction that it is difficult to find a free and well-favored human birth. First, contemplate the preciousness of being free and well-favored. This is difficult to gain, easy to lose. Now I must do something meaningful. I'll say it 2 more times before I ring the gong. The chanting of the instruction that it is difficult to find a free and well-favored human birth. First, contemplate the preciousness of being free and well-favored. This is difficult to gain, easy to lose. Now, I must do something meaningful. The chanting of the instruction that it is difficult to find a free and well-favored human birth. First, contemplate the preciousness of being free and well-favored. This is difficult to gain, easy to lose. Now I must do something meaningful. So again, you can first contemplate the words, then the meaning to you, then the feeling. So I've put the first reminder up on the screen so you can see it if you forget what it is. And just come back to the feeling of your body breathing. Allowing yourself to just feel what you're feeling. And now I'd like to just read a more contemporary version. And this actually is specifically for Black people, Black diasporic people, and for people who aren't in that category to think about or feel what it means to occupy your own position. So again, this is the 4 thoughts that turn the mind towards sanity, but there's a more very specific language that in this sadhana or accomplishment practice. So first, let me read the commentary from the author, who's Justin Miles. It's a long, sadhanas are usually long, so there's usually commentary and explanations. And so this is the main practice. There's some preliminary practices, but I wanted to get right to here. So this is the commentary. Our minds and bodies are often engaged in behaviors and thoughts that do not produce happiness, and instead drain our life force and cause us to remain in the cycle of suffering known as samsara, or the cycle of hope and fear, or life and death, or happiness and sadness. Sometimes we can see this very clearly and painfully, but find it difficult to change, and we experience consequences that worsen over time. To know that one is causing oneself suffering and to continue to do it is insanity. To know that I am a Black person, but to think that I don't need to assess my conditioned view of reality is insanity. The 4 thoughts ask us to consider how we live our lives and to reevaluate what we consider to be real and why. I recommend contemplating these both from the perspective of a human being and as a Black, or whatever your category is, person, to fully assess the totality of your absolute and relative existence. So the first contemplation, precious African Black birth. So again, I'll read this 3 times. You won't have the, maybe I do have the practice. Hold on a second. I'll put it up online for you. Put it up on this one. I'll say it 3 times, and then I'll ring the bell. Oh, here we go. Wrong sadhana. And you can then contemplate the words, the hear first, and then contemplate the meaning and then the feeling. Precious African Black birth. Despite the seeming insanity in our homes, communities, and place of birth, and historical mistreatment of our people, I am fortunate to be born an African Black person in this human body and at this time. It did not have to be so. This life is so precious and easily lost that to be of benefit to my people, I must live with sanity and practice awakening to my nature. I'll read that again. Precious African Black birth. Despite the seeming insanity in our homes, communities, and place of birth, and historical mistreatment of our people, I am fortunate to be born an African Black person in this human body and at this time. It did not have to be so. This life is so precious and easily lost that to be of benefit to my people, I must live with sanity and practice awakening to my nature. Precious African Black birth. Despite the seeming insanity in our homes, communities, and place of birth, and historical mistreatment of our people, I am fortunate to be born an African Black person in this human body and at this time. It did not have to be so. This life is so precious and easily lost that to be of benefit to my people, I must live with sanity and practice awakening to my nature. So we'll contemplate these words for the next few minutes. Coming back into the feeling of your body, breathing, experiencing your preciousness, your jewel of wakefulness. So happy Pride. I'm very interested to see what it's gonna look like since we don't have parades and parties to look forward to. So I'm still trying to figure that out for myself with friends, and I know there are many virtual things happening, and we'll see. But I wanted to, and so this month, all of the teachers are queer and trans teachers on Wednesdays. So hope you'll be able to join or watch. And so I wanted to really think about the and talk about the relationship between our innate nature, which is, you know, wakeful and brilliant and wise and kind and strong and clear seeing, and the ways then that we are through the environments we're born into, conditioned out of our wakefulness, taught that we are not what we are. And particularly, you know, let's say for me, I have these identity markers, or I choose to use these identity markers, or I have these subject positions that on their own are often that are subject to violence, and historically and contemporarily, erasure, and suffering, conditioned suffering. And then when they're come together, they're put together, there's a kind of sense that the more kind of marginalized identities one inhabits, the less you know, freedom or happiness one experiences. But I'm here to tell you that we can also experience incredible freedom right here, right now, even under really horrendous conditions, because there's freedom that starts internally. You know, there's external oppression, right? There's real life violence. There's real life death. And then there's also the suffering we can experience internally because of causes, conditions that come from outside, and because of causes and conditions we've inherited from family and land and kinship. And there's I was reminded of, and it's recirculating, there's this great interview with James Baldwin, one of my ancestors. I have here a candle of him. I think it's like, I don't know, the Dick Cavett show, some interview, he's talking about, and the interviewer is like, this white dude, he's like, oh, not only are you a Negro, you're a gay, and you know, and you grew up in poverty, just like, and James Baldwin's like laughing. He's like, yeah, you would think, right, that would have destroyed me, but there are also those sources of power. And there are the ways to, like my own sources of ignorance contain the sources of wisdom. My own sources of suffering also contain my source of wakefulness. And sometimes in Buddhist practice, particularly in Western Buddhist practice, that's really dominated by whiteness and, you know, non-transness and non-queerness. There's this emphasis on disembodiment, but there's no waking up without the body. When Shakyamuni Buddha woke up, it was through renouncing these ascetic forms of trying to separate the body and the mind. It was when he sat down under the Bodhi tree and he touched the earth in the Bhumi Sparsha mudra and said, the earth is my witness. And it was through sitting through feeling the body, through working with the cycles of day and night, and you know, hunger and fullness and sleepiness and irritation. It wasn't some kind of separation. That's a real, as a matter of fact, he mastered those forms that were about separation and found that they didn't lead to wakefulness because they were in duality. And his own privilege, right? He was born into the top of a very oppressive system that continues today, the caste system, the Brahmin caste system. He was on top. And there was tremendous dissatisfaction, and he listened to that dissatisfaction. And to the best of his ability, and there were limits, he became a revolutionary because he was able to, in part, really disrupt the caste system. He needed help from his wife, whom he abandoned, later to understand that women needed to be part of the Sangha. They had a lesser position, but that was even revolutionary to have that happening. But it had its limits, you know, because of the conditioning of the society at the time. But the body, our bodies, our relative bodies are also a source of our wakefulness. We don't live in the absolute, you know. We eat, we defecate, we urinate, we cry, we love, you know, we get angry, we get sick, we work out, whatever it is. We live, we don't live in space, right? And our natures are one, and they're happening at the same time. And so this idea is to really begin to take hold of all of our identities, the ones that are sites of suffering and the ones that are sites of power, right? Because they all can cause suffering if they're left, if we just ignore them and pretend that nothing needs investigation. It's all up for investigation. All the wisdom is here, body, speech, and mind. And these contemplations are part of, you know, meditation, contemplation, and study. All of these practices are meant to help us experience our true nature, which is wakeful, which is emptiness, luminosity. And not that emptiness doesn't mean nihilism, it means possibility. Luminosity is our action. So to experience the possibility of being in this precious situation. I could have been born in a situation where I never heard the Dharma and never practiced it. Never knew teachers or teachings, never met people, never got the opportunity to teach the Dharma, which is even more incredible. Could have been born at a time or in a land where the Dharma didn't exist or wasn't accessible. It didn't exist in a form that was accessible. It's truth always exists, right? Or it could have been born in a land or a time where I wasn't allowed to read. Or have leisure. Or travel. Or someone owned me. Or I was married off at a young age. Or, you know, or I was born in another realm, in the animal realm, where I had my basic wakefulness, but I couldn't hear the Dharma, you know, so I was afraid. Or born in the God realm, where everything is so good, I don't need anything. You know, I float above everything. I can't experience my humanity. Or born in the jealous God realm where I'm number two and not number one. So I'm always focused on number one. You know, we know people like that. Maybe we're those people. Or it could have been born in the hungry ghost realm where nothing, no matter how much I ingest, no matter how much money I have, food I have, information I have, it's not enough. The hungry ghost realm is, the imagery is so interesting. It's usually depicted as beings with long necks, pin mouths, and really full bellies. Or I could have been born in the hell realm, which would be terrible, where the state of mind or state of being is so tortured that even the precious Dharma seems like an imposition and violence, and I reject it. So this contemplation is meant to remind me. They say that to be born a human, and so it's a human point of view. So, you know, who knows what the dolphins would say, but to be born a human and to have a free and well-favored birth is like a turtle sticking its head up in the ocean and sticking its head through a ring in the ocean. Right? It's just, you know, so small, so minuscule, that the chances of me being born into a free and well-favored human birth is such a gift that I can use, and that it's important for me to remember that the conditions of the world often try to tell me that I'm not free and well-favored, right? And that I have to have this and that in order to be truly free and well-favored. But the Dharma tells me that I can contemplate my existence, can contemplate this body, whatever state it's in. I can contemplate this mind. I can contemplate my environment and see and experience how precious it is. And that begins to free me of the view that there's something wrong with me. Because I and many of us have experienced harm, violence, trauma. And those things, in many ways, are meant to snuff out our light, to control us, to diminish us. And many of us, particularly those of us who inhabit bodies and positions that have been historically and contemporarily maligned and harmed, we're taught from a young age that we're shitty, you know, we're not good enough. And we have to fit into certain boxes, into certain modalities. But the Dharma is about freedom and experiencing ourselves as we are. However that's manifesting right now. It's a manifestation of wisdom. Even when we're kind of in our worst moments, we can learn from that. If we actually truly let it pierce us, you know, my own bad behavior can wake me up. My own, you know, self-denigrating thoughts can wake me up. I've had that experience so much in my life that my orientation towards destruction ended up being the doorway to enlightenment and wakefulness. That's how I found the Dharma, is really by trying to destroy myself at that time, really through drugs and alcohol and sex and all, you know. And through that experience of almost dying many, many times, overdose and car crashes, and I really don't know how I lived. That led me to communities that were oriented toward healing and wakefulness, and there I found the Dharma. I was introduced to the Dharma as a teenager. So we don't know. It's never too late. We're never somehow too damaged. There's never we don't need to do anything to be worthy just by being born. Everything that is born worthy. And really, in many ways, it was through the teachings of the Dharma, which, let me be honest, many of the Dharma communities are the opposite of these contemplations, the way they manifest. It's not treating people like they're precious or human. It's the very limits of, as I said, if we individually don't investigate, and as groups we don't investigate, then we begin to those kind of passion and aggression and ignorance begin to seem like the foundation, right? The things that are harmful begin to seem normal. So it's ironic, painfully ironic, that in many Buddhist communities, whether it's in the East, the West, the South, the North, whatever, the human shit gets in the way. The human systems, patriarchy, white supremacy, power, money, and the investigations aren't brought to that level of the organization or the group. And so the Dharma gets filtered through all that sludge. And people, many of us then internalize that. You didn't sit the right way. That's why you're not enlightened. You didn't study under the right teacher. You didn't chant the right thing. You didn't wear the right whatever. The Dharma is free. Just like we are free and well-favored, the Dharma is free and well-favored. It's never asked you. It asks you to investigate your shit and to do that with exertion and diligence, but it never asks you to twist yourself. It never asks you to submit to abuse. But it asks you for unwavering looking and feeling. And I think particularly at this moment in time, with the intensification of illness and its disproportionate impact in certain communities, and the intensification of violence against Black folks, Indigenous folks, trans people, children, women, female-bodied people. We have to be warriors of wakefulness. We have to be warriors of the preciousness of human birth. And that's not some soft thing. That's fierce. It's like a sword of wakefulness. Now I must do something meaningful, right? I don't just think about my preciousness and well-favored human birth. I have to do something meaningful with that reality to the best of my ability, whatever that is at that time. And then to really commit, as the forward minders go on, it gets more and more, the heat gets turned up on what we have to do, right? So I won't go into those, but basically we're really asked to clean that mirror, right? Clean that mirror. What's there? Polish that jewel, right? So, here we are. Here we are. We've been here many, many times before. We'll be here many, many times again. How do we transfer the energy of wakefulness into the energy of connection and action? We first start with ourselves, because we don't want to be putting out our nonsense. It's like every time I teach, I like practice before I teach. I ask for help so that I'm more of a clear and clean vessel and not passing on confusion to people or aggression or attachment. Right? So we do have to work simultaneously with ourselves, you know, and how can we really, I think about this, that do I really love my Blackness? Do I really love my queerness? Do I really love my transness? And of course, the answer is no, because I've been taught not to. And so I have to work at reminding myself to love deeply those sources of wisdom, those sources of power, those sources of insight. And when the negative messages that I've been taught, you know, sometimes inadvertently, sometimes very vertently, you know, sometimes very purposefully, you know, to contemplate those messages of why do I think it's, well, for a long time, I don't feel this way anymore, but for a long time, the darkness of my skin was such a source of torture. Or, you know, being trans was such a source of torture. Being queer was, I would pray, I don't want to be this way. I want to be normal. I want to desire differently, you know, I want to look different. I want to fit into what they say I should want to fit into. And, you know, I manifested at a very young age as a, you know, my mom was like looking at me like she knew I was like 5 years old, you know? And so the Dharma has been one of the sources, you know, other things, psychotherapy and whatever, like queer sex. That definitely helped a lot. I was like, oh, this, okay, yeah, okay, this makes sense. This feels good. I mean, sex in general is like pretty great. But the Dharma helped me really to uh, say, if this is saying that I am free and well favored, then all of me is free and well favored. I can bring all of me. So with that, I'd love to hear any of your questions or about the practice or anything I said, or any of your thoughts. You can, sorry, Sheena, I'm cutting into your part, but you can feel free, you can ask. I think Sheena will unmute you, or you can put them in the chat if you feel a little shy to speak or don't want to be recorded. You can ask your questions in the chat. So I'll turn it over to Sheena, our host.
Thank you so much, Shanté. Anyone has any questions or anything they want to share, please just let me know and I will unmute you. Or as Shanté said, you can put it in the chat and I will read it on your behalf.
Aisha.
Great.
Thank you, Shanté. I really needed to hear this talk. I just needed to be here. So thank you. And just thinking a lot about just the notion of clearing, being clear before one teaches the Dharma, but I
Mm.
think about it in, I just feel like, wow, that's like for everything it needs to be,
Yes, yes, yes.
So often I'm like running, I'm like, oh, live at 5, and haven't just taken a moment to ground myself. So that just really deeply resonated. And also when you were just saying, do I really love my Blackness, and for you, your transness, and me, my womanness and queerness. So just really thinking about that in these moments, and just in terms of Dharma, like just been thinking about liberation and work, and what is the work in this moment, as someone who, I'm just not going outside in that way. I mean,
Mm.
I'm gonna get some,
Mm-hmm.
but and I want to be, I really want to, but I can't, for my
That's
own,
right.
yeah. And yet just kind of feeling like, what am I doing? Yeah. And sitting is a refuge. So it's been really hard for me to sit right now. So,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and so just thinking about, Buddha, the historical Buddha, in terms of his own liberatory work, through sitting, and also just in terms of the work that he did in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really, thank you. It's so good to see you. Glad you're settled in. Um, I think right now, one of the things that's been really helpful for me has been group practice. So I mean, I sit on my own, but like this past Saturday, I was, I scheduled I do different practices on different days, and so I was scheduled this one practice. It's a longer practice, and once a month, like 4 or 5 of us do it or more, do it together. And we had just done it a couple weeks ago, and I said, hey y'all, if you're around, we're all in different time zones. I said, I'm doing this practice, will you join me? And another friend of ours didn't have the practice, but I said, we just did this empowerment with the Dalai Lama online. He said, do whatever. I said, okay, just come on in. So we practiced together, and it felt like, it was just like heartbreaking and beautiful, and felt held. And I've been just trying at least once a week to do to join. So I did join Reverend Angel's Black Sit on Monday, and over 400 people there. And then I did the Dalai Lama's thing on Thursday night. I don't know the timing. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning, Thursday night, and Friday night. And then I did a week ago, Zenju Earthly Manual had so I'm just trying to like, and I teach on Friday nights compassion practices. So I'm just trying to like sit with other people, because I feel there's a lot going on. And for me right now, except for the rally that was literally outside my door when I walked out of my door on Sunday, and there were like 3,000 people outside my door. I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm in a protest rally. I really, my work is really virtual. So monetary support,
Right.
supporting bail funds, or helping people get PPE, or I'm not in a place where I can put my health at risk and body at risk like that. Or amplifying things, getting information to people, working on, legislative. There's all levels. The whole thing now where we're trying to nationally, so we're working locally to defund, cut the police budget, and so there's a whole, 20 years ago, I would have been out there doing it all. But, I've been in enough situations with NYPD where, they're dangerous. And so, Pride March, I mean, everything, they're just waiting to knock people over the head. And so I really, they're driving SUVs into people and all this shit. So it's, there's different kinds of ways. And my feeling is the more relative power one has in the world, the more vulnerable that person should be making themselves. So the people with the most relative power should be on the front lines, you know, not the people with, you know, I really feel strongly about that. The people who have the least to lose should be,
Yes.
you know, so it's an inversion of how this particular country runs, right? Where we put the most vulnerable first as cannon fodder. So, I'm somewhere in the middle there. So I'm trying to, do these different kinds of things, and I feel like really called. I was talking to one of my teachers, had our monthly call the other day, and I said, I just feel really called to be like doing Dharma, shit. And there's other things people like want me to teach them how to make to-go packs, like bug out packs. I'm like, oh yeah, because I'm a prepper. I was like, oh yeah, I'll do an IGTV on that. I know, So I was just like, whatever you can do, and you're, first of all, and also congratulations on your Lambda Literary Award. So you're doing so much amazing work in the world, and that is and have been for so long. So I think that we can recalibrate some of those, and you're in a wild place. So I would, I wouldn't either. But I think this combination of kind of like, I really feel like my actions do have to be grounded in the Dharma, and also taking breaks, so like I was all in this stuff around my institution, or the institution where I'm trying to say, not say my institution, is not the institution where I am employed, and around trying to protect faculty and students and staff from the opening. And then I said, you know what, I'm let the white folks do that. I'm this summer is, I'm not, and there's some other stuff I'm working on with people there strategically, but I think also just taking some breaks and some space is really important. So yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Good to see you. Any other questions or? Yes. Elle?
Oh, hi, I'm
Yeah.
muted. I didn't realize. Thank you. And just thank you so much, Shanté. I'm really glad to be a part of Weekly Dharma this week, and I just joined a couple weeks ago, and I've been watching your videos for years, ever since a friend recommended, and so to be here in the live teaching, I really feel it, and that's a blessing to me. So thank you, and one that honors this intersection of Blackness and transness, and during this moment, during this kind of, not a new moment, but certainly a catalyzing and historical moment. And I guess my question to you is about uncertainty. And you were mentioning samsara earlier. So I'll say, without giving too much background about myself, until I'd say the past few weeks, my practice was holding all of my uncertainty. Not that it wasn't there, but I am a systems neuroscientist. I see fractals and chaos in the system. They're a part of it. That doesn't mean that I wasn't, social distancing, that we don't have actions. I wasn't like, oh, chaos, cool.
Yeah.
Both my parents were very, very ill with coronavirus, and in the community, and as you already mentioned, the disparate effects on marginalized folks and Black people in particular. And I guess what I'm getting at is around the virus and the kind of, I'm okay with having a lot of uncertainty about the end of capitalism. My uncertainty was being held by my practice. but the past, 2 weeks or so, which I'm so, it's, there's so much pain and grief and anguish and rage and awakening. And I'll say for me, my liberation theology is one in which, like, Black trans lives, not just lives, but joy to the front. And that would solve everything. But not everyone agrees with me on that. And I guess what I'm saying is, my ability to kind of sit with my uncertainty is shifting now that I want more, now that I'm in activism every day and participating every day, and changed my whole budget for all of these things. Now I'm wanting to be part of this movement for something that's more certain. Even though it's, for me, it's like Tony McDade at the front, but still, however we got to get there, like I'm what, and so now the intersections between things like how protest meets coronavirus, I'm noticing I'm back in my own wheel of samsara about how to deal with uncertainty.
Yeah.
And, I'd be grateful for any thoughts you might have on how you work with that.
Yeah, thank you. That was really great. I think I do have to remind myself all the time that it is what's certainty, right? I have to ask myself what does certainty look like for me? Like when I say usually I don't say certainty, I say I don't like uncertainty, but what's certainty? So I think sometimes I'm talking about habit and routine, right? Routine is good, it's important for many of us. Because it's orienting, this, right? It provides a sense of safety, provides a sense of boundaries. But the weird thing that happens is that I forget that everything shifts. And sometimes that's fine because it's little shifts, it's like, oh, the train's late or whatever, the internet goes out, right? Okay, that sometimes can make everyone crazy, but whatever, the internet. But then it's like the amplified uncertainty. So something like coronavirus, when it's not just me or a few people, but it's the world, and it's not just, it's unprecedented in our time. I mean, I guess there are a few people alive who were alive during the 18 Spanish flu. It's the shift in all the systems. It's the exposure, and then it's like, oh fuck, all of this is fake. The things I like are fake, right? Everything is fake, right? And not bad fake, but just like emanations of mind, right? We could really do anything, and we're told this is what you can do, X, Y, Z. And then you see, we can let people out of prison. Just let them go. We can find money to, we can find food. We can find shelter. Amazon can turn part of its campus into a home, like a homes for 100 families. What? People can donate $100 million. It should be more than that. People can be in New York. They can give a fucking iPad to there's 1 million kids in New York State. An iPad to every kid. Okay. But y'all just said we did, you know what I mean? So it's like all of a sudden the uncertainty opens up our minds and our eyes and possibilities, right? But then the forces of habit, passion, aggression, ignorance come back and say, no, right? People say, I want a haircut, or whatever it is. Or the government says, okay, we helped you for 2 weeks, it's over, And so I think being able to ride that wave starts with, but does not end with, when we sit and when you sit and you're like, you're feeling okay, it's not up, it's not down, and then all of a sudden a wave of emotion. And there's that choice of like, do I end the session and get up because it doesn't feel great, or do I stay with that? And sometimes it feels like, I mean, there have been times in my practice I feel like I'm going to die from these emotions. But when I get to the other side, because it's something that, like all phenomenon, arises, abides, and dissolves, like appearance, right? I'm like, oh, I made it through. So we're in the middle right now. We're in the middle of the overturning or the uprising and it's going to settle again. You know, Ferguson was 5 years ago. I remember all the protests right before 9/11, you know, and it felt like we were right there. It was like, oh, so I felt it was, and then 9/11, boom, you know. So it's always there, but sometimes there's a peak. Sometimes there's the world is there right now, you know, Arab Spring, you know, all these things that arise. So how are we, what is it that I'm afraid of, right? And why do I want to run to safety? Not relative safety, which is important, right? I wear my mask. Listen, I got masks, gloves, face shields, you know, PM2.5 filter. I don't play. I don't play with none of this, you know. But so not relative safety, right? You know, we lock our doors and all that stuff. But when I want to run to absolute safety, my way, you know, this is how it should be, whether that's right, wrong, whatever. Then I have to like start to think about, sometimes it's like, usually the very few fears, like fear of death is the major one. You know, fear of being alone, loneliness, which is related somewhat to death. Fear of, you know, not getting what we want, you know. And so when I want to close up again, can I just keep a little bit of my heart open? And sometimes the uncertainty that we're able to, it's like it's scale, it's scaling up or scaffolding up. Sometimes I'm not able to hold global uncertainty, but I can maybe hold the uncertainty of my family situation or my job or my city, right? I can hold the uncertainty of my, you know, I have a neighbor, they lost their 16-year-old daughter died, coronavirus in March, and another neighbor, his father died. And it's like, I can hold them. I may not be able to hold all of coronavirus, so COVID-19, but I can hold them. I can hold friends who've been sick. I can hold my own, you know, relationship to all of that. And then I may have more resources on a day or a month, and I can hold more. For me personally, it's been, you know, the last week I've been getting very clear on what I can and can't hold, and it's like no, 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 and then saying like, and then holding space. For me, it's holding space for Black folks who, you know, my Black graduate students, you know, who are going through it, or colleagues who are junior to me, or you know, doing more supporting. I have some relative financial stability and abundance, so giving that, supporting people in that way, and so seeing where my capacity is, and allowing myself to pull back and not do too much. And then when I'm able to expand again, it's like breathing, you know, and then being able to expand again. But I think it's important not to do too much, because this is the eruptions are part of a long history, and whatever interruptions or solutions or whatever are also, these are long, this is about sustainability. And so I think sometimes that's about burnout, or sometimes it's about taking on too much, or sometimes it's about moving too fast. And so coming back, you know, because we're trying to undo you know, people say 400 years, they mark 1619, but we're talking about, you know, we're really talking about 500 years, you know, from 400, 500 years. We're talking about hundreds of years of indoctrination and not just on Turtle Island, but across the world. You know, we're talking about all kinds of our minds being, and our perception being controlled for a long, long time. Not just us, but our parents, our grandparents, our great, you know. And so when the veil gets pulled back, it can be scary. And so we take it, you know, bite size, you know, take it bite size. That's because we want to, and being in community, I think, is the most important thing, because that's how we sustain whatever we're doing. That's what I would say. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I don't want to, we have one more, so let's take one more question, because we're at almost 8:30. So please, Brittany.
Oh, okay, I will make it kind of quick. I teach literacy here. I live kind of outside of Buffalo, New York, kind of out in the sticks. And this is something that's been new to me. I started in January, you know, got this new job, was loving my new job, you know, 2 months in, we are, you know, our semesters are closed. I'm somehow learning to be an online teacher, which has been an interesting experience. For the first time in my life, I am in a situation where I am in the minority. That's not how I grew up, the schools I went to, you know, and I mean, I love my students. It's been incredible. And I also am currently finishing up my master's thesis. I work with the intersection of medicine and literature, and particularly the disparity in the health systems regarding Black bodies. And this history goes forever. And so I was already kind of feeling this like stress and this rage. You know, I'm just sitting here brooding, reading all this work, and now I'm just finding. Kind of trying to find this balance between being able to be available for my students and meeting them where they are, and also expressing to them, you know, kind of where I'm coming from. And again, it has been difficult. You know, most of my students don't have laptops, they don't have access to the internet. So it's been, you know, very spotty, in and out here and there, but, you know, we're doing the best that we can right now. But I guess I just really, my fear, which I'm trying to work with, is I don't want to come in with that white savior complex. I don't want to be that person. You know, they don't need to be like me. They don't need to live the life that can't happen. But I'm trying to kind of toe this line between, you know, being vulnerable with my students, being transparent with my students, but not making it about me and my experience, and not just, you know, mowing them over and telling them this is how I feel, so you should feel this way too. So I guess I'm just looking for some help with that. You know, how do I navigate this? You know, being a Caucasian woman, and all of my students are Black or Hispanic, and you know, everything's been good, but I just find with this that there's all these tensions, you know, and I want to make sure that I'm leaving the right space and I'm keeping it on the side of being vulnerable without any sort of narcissism or any sort of making it about my own experience.
Yeah. How old are your students that you work with? What's the population?
So I teach adults, but my students are anywhere from 19 to 65. It's anyone that needs to get their high school diploma.
Okay, great. So I think as someone who's my profession, I'm a professor, you know, and I've learned a lot about pedagogy through experience, you know, through teaching. and seeing what works and what doesn't work. And also as a Dharma teacher, very similar. And what I find particularly in the like educational setting is like, I go in with the attitude that my students have an incredible amount of wisdom, particularly adult learners.
Yeah.
A incredible amount of wisdom. And I'm not there to like so much my knowledge, even though I have a lot of, you know, I have a lot of degrees, I have 3 degrees and whatever, but I'm there to help remind them of things that they know and help them to sharpen what they have, sharpen their skills. So it's not so much about like content, even though that sometimes is important. Like I've got to teach them this, boop, 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 boop. It's more about being a good director, a good facilitator, and really leaving space for them, their wisdom to arise, and them to also for like horizontal learning to come. And you know, your students are aware of the dynamics, right?
Yeah.
They have white teachers their whole lives, many of them.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like they're like, this is new to them, this is new to you. And so I think even though you're in this classroom setting in the minority, you're still in a position of power, right? Because you know, that's also like the history of colonialism. The colonists were in the minority too, but they held the power. So it's not about the numbers, it's about the power that we wield. And I think if you have a relationship to your own power, like, oh, this is the dynamic. How can I begin to break up the inherent power dynamics in the student-teacher relationship and begin to make room for my students' experience? Like maybe you ask them, like I always ask my students, who of you have ever had Black professors before? You know, or Black teachers? And they'll be like, someone will be like, never, you know, or first time I came, you know, was in university, or you, or whatever. So I think making room for those conversations can be important. They may take you up on it, they may not.
Right.
But I think before I go into the classrooms, like I said, oops, sorry, hold on. My earbuds just went out. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's about being clear, you know? So I have to remind myself that I'm the teacher, and I can't abdicate that role. So vulnerability for me is about truthfulness and about transparency, but it's not about my story, right? And so the space is for them. I'm holding space for my students. That's what I do as a teacher. I hold space for y'all here. I hold space for my students. And whatever I tell students is to help them feel safer or more comfortable or whatever, but not to take over the space. So I'm there, I have to create enough spaciousness in me so that I can hold space for them. We're not equals in that way, right? I'm getting paid. I have, you know, I'm evaluating them. So it's up to me then to, like I said, it's like, then that power that I have I can use that to create more space for them, right? Give them permission to be free. And in this space, I'm here for you, right? How can I help you? So I think that's the thing, but I have to work with my own mind first. Because otherwise I'm really, you know, I've been on the side with, you know, professors, let's say, who really hadn't worked through the ways that they were taught. And so they just kind of passed on, and it was like, well, this is, you know, harmful, or this is boring, you know? So I think, like, you know, working with yourself before you enter the classroom is that's what's most important, because the students will feel if you have
created space for them to arise. That's what we do as educators. We hold space for people. That's really the essence of it. We hold space so that their wisdom can arise. And then we say, okay, well, think about this, think about that. They're already so vulnerable because they're learning to be, literate or more literate, or literate in different ways. They're already literate, but they're learning a different kind of literacy. They're learning a kind of literacy that will make them legible in capitalism, right?
Right.
But I have to be like, what am I bringing that might get in the way of their freedom? So you have to come to some relationship with your whiteness that doesn't block them, right? And so that means working with the experience of being a white, an embodied person who's, carrying the power of whiteness, right? And so what's that relationship? There's the right use of power. We have to not abdicate our position, right? And it's like that holding space, I think, is the most important thing. So that starts with us really being able to do that on the cushion, holding space and holding our anxiety and like feeling it arise and feeling our uncertainty. And like, I've never questioned what it means to be white, right? Like a white woman too, like that's how you identify, right? And what are those dynamics? And that doesn't need to be processed with your students, right? That can be processed with other white folks, other white women, right? Who've done that work maybe before you. Maybe you can get a mentor, there are a lot of white women educators who have done this work.
Yeah.
And begin to say, talk through that stuff with those people. And there's a lot of books around that stuff, so that when you're in the classroom, whether it's physical or virtual, you're really holding space for your students' wisdom and confidence and to arise.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. I think there was just something in the chat. Oh, okay. Great. Okay, someone just left me a lovely little note. Okay. So I want to just thank you all for being here. And Sheena, I think you have some announcements.
I do. Thank you so much, Shanté. Beautiful talk and amazing Q&A. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. For those of you who are live, and then for those of you who join us via the recording. Please join us next week, June 10th, for a Dharma talk with Karma Lodro Gwendon. The topic is exploring freedom. And I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat if you are interested in learning more information. And I'd also like to remind you to consider becoming a subscriber to Weekly Dharma Gathering if you're not already. Right now we have a 7-day free trial that you can find on our website. And please be sure to spread the word to any friends or family who may find our talks valuable. In addition, if you use social media, please make sure you follow us at Weekly Dharma, and we're on Facebook at Weekly Dharma Gathering. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Stay safe, everyone. Stay sane and stay healthy. And Gendon's amazing. He's a student. He's a monastic. He lives at Gampo Abbey. He's a student of Pema Chodron. He's really amazing teacher. So you should definitely tune into him next week. Bye.